Good morning, I'm Beth, BJ's daughter-in-law. I'll be filling in for her for one more block before she returns on the next block. The good news is she's passed her surgery and recovering well and is already back in her studio working on the next one. So let's get started. I've been thinking of some ideas for the toucan and I'm curious how well they work. For this video, we'll skip past the stitching down of the wool applique pieces because that's the same for every block. I placed the applique pieces down like it shows on the pattern and stitched them with the blanket stitch and matching wool thread that was part of Wonderfil's thread kit. The only thing I did differently on this one was I held off stitching down the branch where the toucan is perched. There's some stitching that I wanted to go underneath of the branch before it gets stitched down, and you'll see that later in the video. So the next thing we want to do is outline the bird's body with the open fly stitch here, and then these sections for the tail. This is actually why I haven't done the log yet, because I wanted to make sure I could get these stitches so that they fold under the log better. So normally when we're doing the stitches on the outside like that, we have the open toe foot. This is a 20C. I'll be using the 20D that has dual feed. So normally we do it so that this part of the foot right here is up against the edge for a buttonhole where we want the buttonhole to go into the body or into the part that we're appliquing on. For this one, since the open fly needs to be half on and half off, so that this half can be off of the body and this half can be on it, I need to make sure the 20D has a mark right here half in the middle, so I'll make sure that that middle part rides along the edge of the applique. And the thread that I'll be using is FT40, which is a variegated black that fairly well matches what they've got here. So hopefully that'll come out nice. So I'm starting at this point right here, which will actually be covered by the log, but I want to get it reasonably well stitched down. I don't need to start all the way up against that because that will be fully covered. And I want most of this to not show until I get to the point where it's not covered by the log. Like before, I'm generally trying to only turn when it's at a good stopping point. In this case, when it's at the bottom of the V, so that it won't be obvious. I don't want the stitches that are going to go over top of each other, I don't want them to get off. And that doesn't quite go all the way up to the body, but another stitch would have it well into the white, and I don't want to do that. So I'm stopping there on that side. I need to do this one and then two about here and here going up to right in there. I don't think any of that needs to be marked. And slightly tilting this one, not dramatically, but a little bit. So I'm pretty happy with how these turned out, and I like the fact that these nicely blend underneath of the log here. And then, so at this point, now that I've got those down, the next thing I'm going to do is stitch down the log with the initial small blanket stitch, which is going to be using EN 27, which is the wool that we're doing most of the initial blanket stitches with. But I do want to glue this part of it so that it's less likely to come up more than I want it to. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to flip back over to the machine and stitch down the log. So I have the log stitched down with the basic blanket stitch all the way around. The next thing I need to do is using this one, which is SP18. Yes, SP18. I need to stitch down around the log and then a line down the center of the log for texture. I will be using on the Bernina, it's stitch number 6. It's a basic triple stitch like that to give it a little bit of an outline and some texture in the center of the log. So, and I have the log all stitched down with the decorative part in the middle done. So the next thing I'm going to do is stitch along the outside of the beak using FTO7 for the main outside, and then they have a set of chain stitches coming down through the center part where I will use FT01 for that. So I don't know if this will be useful here or not. I think I want something fairly skinny like one of these for this particular stitch. And my notes say that that is 2.5 with a 6.0, and that this is 3.0 with a 6.0 length. So width is 3.0 and width is 2.5. enough room. The next thing I need to do is basically outline his face, the white part here on his face, which is they use bullion knots here, and then just a basic backstitch here for the face outlines. So what I'm going to do is use this stitch, 416. This is the default settings. This is at 60%, which affects the length of the stitches. And then the width I set down to 3.5 for this one here. So I'm going to use this to mimic the bullion knots here. Based on the way they go in the machine, I'm going to have to go around this way so that they loop in the correct direction. So, and then so I'll start here, loop around with those to here, and then come down here with straight stitches. Number 6, which is the triple stitch. And I am using FT41 for these. This is a lot more of a turn than I'm used to on this. Getting a little pooky there. Okay, so I've got the beak done, and then the face outline is done. So I'm reasonably happy with this. It was a little hard to control. It kind of got away from me a little bit in some of the parts here, but overall I think it looks good. This is a very tight curve for this stitch, so just be careful when you're doing that. And then this is just a basic straight stitch down. The next thing I need to do is the decorations within the body area. Which they have a line right here kind of separating out his wing, and then a couple of lazy daisy flowers on his wing, and then some seed stitching to give him texture on his body. So I was going to use accent 941 for the seed stitches, and doing like 3 triple stitches, 3 triple stitches, 3 triple stitches, and a couple of rows along the body, somewhat curved. Probably about 4 of them along here, 5 or 6 along here, and then like 3 of them along here to give him just a little bit of texture on his belly. And then for these stitches, this is Spaghetti 37. This is just going to be stitch number 6, the triple stitch, and then I have a stitch that I designed for this one that is actually just a loop that kind of starts here and loops around like this, and it starts and ends in the center of it. So I can do a loop and a loop and a loop like that for 5 of them. And then for this one down here, I think I'm only going to do 4 just because it gets a little too busy with the stitch, with the machine stitched one there. It just gets too busy when it's that small for the loops. Oh, he's hard to see. That was 1, 2, 3. This is 4. And then this one, I'm just going to try and bisect this here, and hopefully it looks good. Okay, let's take that out and see how it looks. They're not quite as even as I had hoped to get them, but they're pretty close. I think what I did was change the percentage down to 75. So this, at this point, I want to basically have it 90 degrees to the previous one. That's hard to see on this fabric. And then here. Okay. I think that's actually good right there. Okay, so the length is 4.0, width is 2.0. And I'm just going to stitch this one right here. Just 3 little stitches right there, and I have it set to only do 3 at a time. Here. I'm going to bury the extra threads in here and then look at how that looks and decide if I need more. So at this point, I'm done with the main bird part. This is kind of resembling the seed stitches that they did to give it texture on his belly. And this is his wing here. I have the definition of his wing, and then these 2 lazy daisy flowers to give for some decoration on that wing. Got the face outline done, the beak done, and the main bird outline and his tail done, and the log done. So the next thing that I need to do is figure out how to get this flower in here. We've done something similar to these vines before, so that part's, I'm not too worried about that, but this flower has been a little tricky to figure out. Just the 3 colors that I'm going to use are these 3, which is FT01, FT07, and then Spaghetti SP24. Those are the 3 colors, which were also used here in the beak and various other places, so it'll pull in those colors nicely. The stitch that I have for that, because this is a hand stitch with a French knot in it, and I don't have anything exactly like that, so I ended up designing a stitch. I ended up with this stitch right here, which is just a couple of tiny stitches, and then it does a diamond shape and then comes back down to the point. This was my original plan, to have 2 layers that come out from the same point, but it ends up too small and will be underwhelming next to the larger bird. So I think what I'm going to do is this one, something closer to this one, where it starts the first round on the base like this, and then comes out from it like that with red, and then like that with orange. So this will be yellow, red, and orange. So the point that I'm going to try and come off of is this point right in here. Try and come off of this point in here and come straight out with 5 yellow stitches. And I'm actually going to stitch by buttons this time, which I don't usually do, but the center has gotten off a little bit, so I'm going to actually raise the needle and kind of just move it over just a touch. I'll put the needle back down. Wasn't much of a change, but a little bit. Okay, that's the first layer. Like that with these 5 coming out. These 2 right here are closer together than what I meant to do, but I think it'll still work. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is I've switched to the red thread, SP24 I think it is. And what I'm going to do is add the same stitch again, starting from here and coming out this way. So it'll be 5 of them coming out like that. So I'm going to get that started. Line it up using this mark right here to see that I'm going straight, and then line it up so that this is just showing enough that it'll start right in there and not cover stuff up too much. This is going to be a lot of stops and starts. This is, it's kind of hard to see with all of these threads. I need to bury those, and then we'll be able to see a little bit better. This one I think is a little bit light at the end, so I'm going to add orange in the middle of these lines. So let me go bury the threads, and I'll be right back to do that. So at this point I have FT07 threaded, and this is basically going to start here and come between these lines to give it a little bit more, to make it a little more filled in here. So let's go ahead and get started here. And I want it to be as evenly in there as I can get it. It's not going to be an exact science, but I want it close. Okay. I think this came out fairly well, but let me bury the threads and then we can get a better look. So at this point, I'm done with this flower here. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. The version of it in the pattern is a little bit fuller than mine, but I do think the orange bits here help to add that fullness and give it a little bit more dimension to the flower. The last thing that I need to do is these stems, although I'm going to have to change it a little bit on mine. Sorry about that. I'm going to have to change it a little bit on mine. In particular, my bird ended up very far to the left, so I don't have a lot of room to play with over here on the left. It's going to... he's awful close to the edge. So instead of looping as far out and putting as many of the leaves over here, I'm going to just... I don't know if you can see the blue markings in here, but I'm just going to do a single loop around like that and then add a single leaf that comes off up there. And then on this side, I'm going to actually add a leaf to help balance out the other side and how it's so close over there. It has a little bit more room over here. So it's going to loop around here and up to here. And then there's another part here that comes up like that. And then this one, I will add the leaf by having a tendril come off of here, and then the leaf will go right in here. And hopefully that will balance out the fact that this side is so far to the left and there's more room over here. So I have this line a little bit darker so it's easier to see. I'm going to actually start at this end because I want to make sure that this point gets as close as I can to right here. I don't want to get off of this point. I would rather risk... If I don't hit this point exactly, it's not as big of a deal as long as I'm close. This point right here, I need to hit as close as possible so that the flower is coming off of the green stem. So I'm going to start from here, go this way, around, down, try and loop around. Hopefully I can get that tight loop there, and then come down to right here. So it's starting on C and the zigzag stitch, and I want the stitch width at 2.0 for the couching process on these threads. This thread is 2 strands of Easy M1008, which is an 8-weight pearl cotton. So this is a slightly darker thread. It goes good with this FT31. Okay. One key is that if I pick up the foot, I need to make sure that the threads stay taut so that I don't end up with a clump like I did on the previous bird. And I like to do the turns on the inside portion of the curve, where the needle is inside the curve. It's a personal preference though. And sometimes on tight curves you have to do both. So I gotta start doing the loop. So turning a fair amount on every inside bite. Well, every other. My loop is coming out a little bit bigger than what he intended, but it'll work out, I think. At this point, I have finished the tendril stems running here on this side and the one over here that loops. On this one, I forgot to do the loop, but I think it'll work this way. The one thing that I am going to do is add a leaf here coming out this way. Going to make sure that fits. And then another leaf coming down here. And then I believe that's everything on this bird, so let me go ahead and get those added. I'm doing the leaves just like I did with the third block using stitch 449 and default length and width. The thread is SP12. That came out pretty nice. I hope you enjoyed this video. BJ should be back for the next block. We have most of it filmed, and we just need to finish the editing and putting all the pieces together, so hopefully that will be available for you in the near future.